Now, another 10-hour pause in Israeli military activity has just come into effect in parts of Gaza to allow more aid to be distributed across the territory. Yesterday, Israel announced that there would be a daily respite in military operations, a major policy change, after growing international pressure over what the United Nations has called man-made mass starvation. On the first day of the pause, there were chaotic scenes as people gathered around lorries moving through designated humanitarian corridors. Supplies were also dropped from the air by Jordan and the UAE. The UN says much more aid is needed to stave off famine. Our Middle East correspondent Yolande Nell updated me on the details on the pause in military activity.
So the Israeli military has said it's going to allow these humanitarian corridors in Gaza for lorry loads of aid to be moved around. That's things like food and medicines in particular. That's started already at 6 o'clock in the morning local time. And then on top of that, you have these limited, localized pauses in the fighting that it's announced. They're supposed to last for 10 hours each day, and they're concentrated in 3 areas in Gaza City, in Deir al-Balah in the center of the Strip, and Al-Mawasi, that coastal area where there are many thousands of people displaced now living in tents. So the idea is supposed to be that this will facilitate much easier aid distribution within the Strip, but we haven't seen that already. Gazans have been expressing a lot of frustration at what happened on the first day. I mean, we had those dramatic airdrops. That was just 25 tons of aid that was dropped by the Jordanians and the United Arab Emirates. Really, you know, a trickle in the flood of what is needed inside Gaza. And you only had about more than 100 lorry loads of aid being picked up from just inside the Gaza border. That is where it has really been stuck in recent days and weeks.
And they said these were to be daily. Did they say how long it's expected to go on for?
Well, the UN's aid chief, Tom Fletcher, talked initially about expecting this to be a week-long change in policy, and the hope, therefore, is that they can take advantage of that on this second day. Everyone will be watching in Gaza to see if things can now really kind of pick up speed. What Tom Fletcher said was needed was action that was sustained, vast and fast. Particularly, they're asking for much quicker approvals by the Israeli military for those lorries to access the Gaza side of border crossings and then move around freely inside Gaza.
And what about on the diplomatic front? We've mentioned that Sir Keir Starmer is going to be meeting President Trump today in Scotland, and I'm sure that Gaza will be very high, if not top of the agenda there. We had those peace talks breaking down last week, didn't we? Where are things on the diplomatic front?
So what happened last week? On Thursday, we had this surprise announcement by the US and by the Israelis that they were withdrawing their negotiating teams from Qatar, where indirect talks have been taking place between Israel and Hamas. And Israel then said it was considering alternative options on talks because of the lack of progress in sealing a new ceasefire and hostage release deal. What had been on the table was this idea of a 60-day truce, in which time you would have about half of the remaining living hostages. It's thought there are 20 of them that would be brought back. Hamas insisted that it had shown maximum flexibility in the ongoing talks, but there's really a huge amount of international concern that things seem to have stalled there. And I think that when Sir Keir Starmer talks to President Trump, he will be looking, as are other allies of Israel in the West, to see if those talks can be restarted, to see if there can be some progress there on an actual deal in Gaza.
Yolande Nell for us there in Jerusalem. Our correspondent Rushdie Abu Alouf gave me an update on the situation on the ground in Gaza.
Well, there is no significant change. What was allowed yesterday is about 70 trucks. People were showing their frustration on social media, and as many as I could spoke last night and this morning, many of them said that we haven't received any aid from the Egyptian or the Jordanian or whatever aid has been allowed. We understand that 40 trucks carrying mainly flour and some medical supplies from the north, and about 30 trucks from the south, which is almost average, like the double of what is used to be allowed even before this tactical humanitarian pause. So the people express their, anger. They said, the siege or the blockade was lifted only on social media, not on the ground. We are still suffering. The prices of food are still high. Yesterday, we have noticed in the morning a little bit of a drop in the prices of the flour. But by the end of the day, the price has gone up again because the trader who are keeping the flour, they didn't see a big amount of aid reach the market, so the prices can be improved. So more of a talk than tactical in the ground. Not as much as people wanted of aid was allowed yesterday.
And what about those airdrops that have been mentioned? Aid agencies have just described them as a mere distraction.
Yes, they have dropped 25 ton of aid in 3 different places in Gaza, but this is equal to 2.5 truck that can be sent by land. So, and people, we have seen pictures and footage of people fighting each other over this parcel of Jordanian or Emirati parcel into Gaza. 25 ton of aid is a drop in the ocean, according to the people. They need about 500 to 600 trucks every day for a month at least to improve the disaster in Gaza.
Rushdie Abu Alouf there, reporting from Istanbul.